Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hello there, and I'm so proud of myself, I actually unmuted myself so I could say hello. How you doing? Welcome to the program. It's a Monday. I feel a little Monday rusty, frankly. And it's getting on in June, which means it's the 24th. And Thursday is the debate. And damn it, I don't have a show on Friday. But, almost everybody I've seen in the last few days, that's all they're saying, debate. People are nervous, anxious, I would suggest. And I will include myself among them. First, I need to say that I am probably going to be taking some time off, not because I need to. It's my head that needs a rest, especially given the fact that we're nearing the time at which I can't even say. See, I can't even. I blah, blah. See, this is why I need some time off. I'm becoming incoherent. And the thing is to have as, like, when you speak to people and you're talking about any of this, what's going on in the world, in our country, it's so hard not to just end up in a defensive crouch, a fetal position, hiding under one's bed. So, and I am getting there, frankly. Not that I'm in the fetal position right now, but I mean, emotionally, I think I am. So it was very hard. For instance, what I'm finding difficult is to just do the basic work to do this show, which means to, like, read the paper, read the news. Today, for instance, because the front pages have been so unbearable, I actually started on the last page today. I thought, you know what? Since starting on page 1 has proved so distressing, how about we start on the other end of the paper, which I did. And here's what greeted me. Let me see. I want to make sure I got the right end here. Yeah. This is page A18. Trump says he proposed cage matches for migrants. Yeah. And because I thought, what? I did read a bit and found out, yes, in fact, he had this bright idea. He was talking to his good friend, the guy who runs the Ultimate Fighting, UFC. That's where, I guess, all no holds barred. And Trump said to him, why don't you set up a migrant league of fighters? And then you have the champion of the migrant league take on the champion of your league. And I think the migrants might win, he says. That's how tough they are. Can you imagine? So this is a guy who, well, why even bother? But I mean, it's like this is an idea that he had that excited him. We know he does not see migrants as humans. And we know that he sees everything as entertainment. And this is a man who tens of millions of Americans want as the president of this country. Okay, so there was that. Trump says he proposed cage matches for migrants, and right next to it, this. Trump suggests Biden may get a shot before the debate. Now, here again, I want to remind you all that anything Trump says is always, when he accuses somebody of something or suggests something is going to happen, like Biden getting a shot before the debate, he's projecting. It's as simple as that. He's going to be hyped up before the debate. And in fact, his former White House doctor, the Dr. Feelgood, who's now on the House Intelligence Committee, he was known for handing out those kinds of drugs in Trump's White House. Uppers. Something that makes you appear extremely energetic, maybe sharpens your head just a little bit. And so Trump in Philadelphia, by the way, his speech in Philly was covered on Fox News live. They cut away to cover it. And even Fox News dumped out when he became essentially incoherent. He was talking about something that literally made no sense, just babbling. And they cut away to a little bit of a flustered female anchor who said, well, we'll have, some thoughts on this in a moment, and cut away to a break. But in Philly, he said, right now, Crooked Joe has gone to a log cabin to study. He's sleeping now because they want to get him good and strong. So a little before debate time, he gets a shot in the ass. This vile man. And that's not all that was on that last page. It was all Trump. The third story on that page was about the book that is called The Apprentice. The book based on hours and hours of interviews with Trump after he left the White House, but talking about The Apprentice. And the quotes from that book, the sense that that interviewer, the author, had of Trump is terrifying too, because it shows how extraordinarily shallow he is, and how forgetful he is, and how addled he can be. And here's one quote from the book. Trump. It's all about one thing: ratings. If you have ratings, you can be the meanest, most horrible human being in the world. Now, think about that. This is a man who actually aspires to be the meanest, most horrible human being in the world, and he's out to prove it. And that wasn't the only Trump story in the Times today. This man has taken over our media, our politics, our civility. He bestrides the globe like the vile colossus he is. Oh. And how would somebody not need some time off if that's what you must immerse yourself in? No, the New York Times, here's another one. Today, Trump tells evangelicals he's a martyr for their faith. Yes, he's now a Christian martyr. But the thing is why is all of this being covered? I mean, I don't know quite what the right thing is to do in terms of responsible journalism in this time. But I have to tell you that all of those headlines from today's New York Times, Trump, 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 Trump. There's another front page one on Flynn family getting rich on Trump ties. Okay. I did not see any corresponding Biden, 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 Biden. I did not, because it isn't there. That is a choice. Cover the clown show, get him the ratings and attention he desires, the oxygen he needs, and tell yourself, I'm imagining the editors at the New York Times, that you're simply informing people about this man who is running for president. So he told the cheering evangelicals, in the end, they're not after me, they're after you. I just happen to be very proudly standing in their way. Yes, he's a saint. He got a standing ovation from the evangelicals when he vowed to shut down the Federal Department of Education. I guess replace it with the Federal Department of Brainwashing, Indoctrination. And he said he would create a federal task force on fighting anti-Christian bias nationwide. We all know how hard it is, what the Christians are enduring. And thank God here, finally, a candidate who knows it and will address the horrors of the discrimination they face. Mm. Mm. So, I follow former Labor Secretary Robert Reich's column. Whoops, what was that? Oh, this will be interesting. The Supreme Court has agreed to decide what? They're still taking in cases when they haven't managed to somehow finish up the cases they've already taken? Oh, they just keep wading more and more into this. They have agreed to decide whether a Tennessee law that bans certain medical care for transgender minors violates the Constitution. Okay. So now they'll sit as, this is where their medical degrees will come in real handy. They'll know what is the proper treatment for. Anyway, so Robert Reich, because he's smart, I find myself in agreement with him, I'd say about 95% of the time. And I wish I had his gift of articulation. But his column today was, he starts it by saying, I'm scared shitless. And I gotta tell you, that's not the way he usually comes on. And since I'm scared shitless, I thought, let's see if we're scared about the same things. And what he's first scared about is, yes, Thursday night, the debate. And here's what he says, because I think this, unfortunately, is true. Because it has less to do with the substance of the debate and more to do with what Americans, what the audience perceives. That's always the most important thing. Ask Richard Nixon, who, as we all famously, supposedly lost the debate with JFK if you were watching it on TV, and won it if you were listening on the radio. Perception. And since I'm losing faith in my countrymen and women and their ability to perceive things, this scares me. Here's what Reich says. I'm less worried that Biden will suffer a mental lapse or physically stumble than I am that Biden will look weak and Trump appear strong. Stop and think about it. That is just, has nothing to do with any words that would come out of either's mouths. It is just the physicality of the two. And standing on the same stage, if you're using your reptilian brain, Trump will look stronger. And there's a lot of using reptilian brains afoot. Reich says one of Trump's most successful ploys has been to frame the upcoming election as a contest between strength and weakness, and to convince many Americans that stridency and pugnacity are signs of strength, while truth and humility signal weakness. And do you know? so many Americans do fall for that. It's a show of strength, of the most laughably cartoonish portrayal of strength. But that's where their heads are. Trump, his meanness, his derisiveness, all of that appears to so many as signs of strength. It's people who think the bully is actually strong and not afraid. I have so often said that one of the most stalwart, strong humans I've ever known personally is Fred Rogers. Huh. Stop and think about what Donald Trump would make of that. Sweet, kind, cardigan wearing Fred Rogers had more strength in every way than Donald Trump. But you can't tell that to most people. Reich goes on in this piece to say something that sort of startled me because he's got a very big heart, and he doesn't throw words around like I hate or this and that. But he says this: over 78 years, I have met and observed a small number of people in American public life whom I'd characterize as vile. Senator Joseph McCarthy, Governor George Wallace, and Speaker Newt Gingrich come immediately to mind, along with Rush Limbaugh and Roger Ailes. What made them vile to me was their cynical opportunism, the eagerness with which they exploited people's fears to gain power. All had the character of barnyard bullies. Yeah. And then he says, Donald Trump is the vilest by far. His loathsomeness extends to every aspect of his being. His continuous stream of lies, the eagerness with which he seeks to turn Americans against each other, his scapegoating of immigrants, his demeaning of women and the disabled, and his utter disrespect for the office of the presidency, for the laws of the land, for the United States Constitution, for the senators and members of Congress and staff and police whose lives he intentionally endangered on January 6th, and for hundreds of thousands of election workers whose lives he directly or indirectly threatened with his baseless claims of election fraud. Character will not be debated Thursday night, but I hope, he says, Americans who have not yet made up their minds or who are wavering in their support will pay attention to it. Character is on the ballot. Well, yeah. So when people you sort of look up to be steady, uh, in when things get tough, when they start saying they're scared shitless, then I start being even more frightened. You know, the word Mellon, Mellon, is all over the place where many of us live in Pittsburgh, PA. The parks, uh, the banks, all kinds of public facilities. We here have the sense of Mellon as, benefactors. But the only benefactor right now of the Mellon money is Donald Trump. And here's another reason why inherited wealth is just not good. Because while the original Mellons actually did something, produced something, whether you think it was good or not, they worked. They're all dead. But one of the grandsons of the former Treasury Secretary, Andrew Mellon, guy lives in Wyoming, probably has extraordinary security there in the middle of nowhere. Bit reclusive. Nobody really knows him, but man, he's sitting on all that Mellon money. And so he gave Trump $50 million. And he did it the day after Trump was convicted of 34 felonies. I wonder what his grandfather would think. It is among the largest single contributions ever made in a presidential race. And that money will immediately go. And unfortunately, it says you and I will be bombarded with political advertisements for Donald Trump, paid for by this Mellon money. They're planning on putting $30 million into ads that air only in Pennsylvania and Georgia. Can you imagine? So this is how This is how elections can be won or lost. Again, money, creating perceptions. Money buys you eyeballs, access to eyeballs. Timothy Mellon is now the first donor to give $100 million in disclosed federal contributions in this year's election. He was already the single largest contributor to super PACs supporting Trump, and there's another candidate he's giving to. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He had, before this 50 mil he dropped in Trump's lap after his convictions, Mellon had already given 25 million to Trump and 25 million to Kennedy. The 50 million check to support Trump is matched only by another donation Mellon made on behalf of another project, and that was the private construction of a border wall in Texas. I believe that's some of the money that Steve Bannon made off with, right? That he's going to be doing. No, well, he's not doing time for that. That hasn't happened. He's doing time for contempt. Who can keep up with these crooks? Mellon also donated another 53 million. I mean, none of this, you think he misses any of this? 100 here, 50 here, 53 here, $53 million worth of stock to help pay for the wall. That was given to a group around the Texas governor, Greg Abbott. Anyway, this Timothy Mellon, who nobody knows anything about and who doesn't really mix with folks, but just mixes up the populace with the propaganda he pays for. He's going to publish a book. He already published a book, his autobiography, Like Anybody Gave a Damn. In fact, it was self-published. And that book is full of such unbelievable racist claptrap. For instance, Black people became even more belligerent after social programs were expanded in the 60s and 70s. Yeah. For delivering their votes in the federal elections, they are awarded with yet more and more freebies, food stamps, cell phones, WIC payments, Obamacare. This is the genius offspring of the Mellons. Speaking of millions, Bloomberg, Michael, did give 20 mil to Biden. But we need more billionaires for Biden. I'm serious. The money's going to Trump because these moneyed people want to keep their money and make even more. Unbelievable. Bloomberg could do better than 20 mil. Remember when he ran for president? Do you remember that? He was, I think he dropped about $1 billion of his money into that failed effort. And somebody explained to me how. Apparently, they flipped a coin. This is still with the debate. They flipped a coin, and the winner, who turned out to be Biden, I really wonder who was there at the coin flipping and who made the call, heads or tails. They don't say that, but this would have been under CNN's CNN's controlling the debate. The coin flip gave the winner, who was Biden, an option. He could either decide whether he would be the last person to speak, or he could decide which lectern he wanted to stand behind. And he chose the lectern. And I sure want to know what that's about. I'm serious. What the hell is that about? There's no studio audience. There's 2 lecterns on a stage. There'll be a camera that'll have single shots of each and a 2-shot of the 2. One will be on the left on the screen. One will be on the right. What Biden picked was the right lectern. Why does that matter? Is it known that that's the better position? I mean, in terms of what? Some kind of psychology, some kind of, have they done? I can't imagine. It would seem to me it'd be a much bigger deal to be the person who gets to close out. The last word that's heard would be yours. But now that's Trump who's going to get the last word because Biden picked the right lectern. What the hell is that about? I'm serious. I haven't seen any or heard any other conversation about it, but it left me just in a state of puzzlement. I mean, genuine puzzlement. I mean, I know we humans, and they've done a lot of studies on how our brains work, and there might be something about being pulled more. Most of us are right-handed. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I have the fortitude to watch this thing. That's 90 minutes. 90 minutes. Okay. Obit. Obit. Boy, this guy had it all. What a charmed life. Almost up until the end. Tony O'Reilly was talking about the Mellon name being a top venues in Pittsburgh. The O'Reilly name is as well. Tony O'Reilly, now gone, the age of 88. His obituary reads like a charmed life. He's a kid born in Ireland. And he, in Ireland, was famous when he was a teenager. He was rugby. He was a great rugby player. In fact, still holds his records. Still hold one of his records. I don't understand. Essentially, what I read was it's essentially sort of akin to the most touchdowns or something. Tony O'Reilly, elite level rugby player. in his teens. And not only that, there's a picture of him. He was gorgeous. I mean, heartthrob, gorgeous young man, and already a national star. He was 26 when he was the marketing director of the Irish Dairy Board. Don't ask me. But at 26, he created a brand of butter that would sell as Irish butter in English grocery stores. And to this day, it is one of Ireland's best known global exports. Kerrygold butter. So here he is in his 20s. He's already now a rising star in the business world or the marketing world. And an American company came calling, and that would be Heinz. He came to Pittsburgh in 1969, and he became the first chairman of the board and chief executive of Heinz that was not from the family. He took the helm, and Heinz's value increased 12-fold. Magic touch. Business Week called him one of the world's most charismatic businessmen. Richard Syrett said, when you sit down to lunch with him, it's like going to a movie theater for entertainment. So he was this charming, handsome, Midas-like businessman. The Queen knighted him in 2001. He was Ireland's first billionaire, by far its richest man. And then listen to this. He had a highly unusual arrangement at Heinz that allowed him to build his own business empire while he was at the head of Heinz. That's unbelievable. And he did. He bought up newspapers in London, in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. He bought Waterford, Crystal, Wedgwood, China, all of that stuff he now owned. That was separate from him at Heinz. And get this, his office was here, but he would fly to Dublin in the Heinz jet after work on Friday, and he'd be back in Pittsburgh in his office at 8 a.m. on Monday. He had a castle in Ireland. He loved it. Nelson Mandela stayed there a little bit. Bill Clinton stayed there, a whole bunch of people. He owned Monets and Picassos and Matisses. He had a mansion in Dublin, a beachfront home in the Bahamas, a chateau in Deauville, France. I mean, this guy charmed life. But then, in 1996, Forbes named him the fourth highest paid chief executive in the US. Problem was, Heinz's business was on a downturn. Not a good look. And Forbes said of him then, Tony O'Reilly's ego and paycheck are bigger than his accomplishments. For a man who had only known charm and being the charmer, this was rough. He stepped down as chief executive at Heinz the next year. He kept the chairman of the board till 2000. But he turned his attention to all those other businesses he had created. And then came 2008. Like so many, like Donald Trump, in fact, his business empires were built on debt. And so when the global financial crisis blew in, a lot of what he had caved in. He lost control of his newspapers. Waterford, Wedgwood, lost. He had to sell his castle. He had to sell his Matisses and his Picassos and Monets. He owed 8 banks $270 million. And this once charmed golden boy, at the age of 79, declared bankruptcy. So he didn't die with a lot. I'm sure when people like this declare bankruptcy, they're not like, well, he lost almost everything. Huh. After that, in his 80s, he did give a speech when he was honored in Dublin at the old Belvedere Rugby Club. And he, the room was filled with people who adored him, former teammates, friends. And he said this, and I'm sure it is true, but I wonder how much he was able to bear the truth of it. He says, you win and you lose. And if you don't know how to lose, you don't know how to live. Somebody should tell that to Donald Trump. Because quite clearly, he does not know how to live, and he cannot tolerate losing. The charming Anthony O'Reilly, I don't know. I never met him, but what a larger than life figure. Milton writes from ABC News as to why Biden chose the right side podium after the coin flip. It said Biden just likes that side. It's a personal preference. Brooke says, is it stage right? Yeah, it's as we look at the screen, he's going to be on the right. So, I mean, on the stage itself, looking from his perspective, he's on the left. So, yeah, stage right. But that just seems odd. So they're saying it's his. It doesn't say anything about how we perceive him. It said he. That's where he wants to be. Wow. Just wow. Hang on. I think we got some emails in here. William writes, Fred Rogers was a far better deal maker than Trump without ever even setting out to make a deal. I always loved to return to the television footage of Rogers speaking before Congress, with Senator John Pastore and convincing the skeptical senator in mere minutes to grant public television $20 million. And he did it not begging. He wasn't begging. He was simply saying, here's what I do. Here's what we do for children. And it's important work. And Pastore was almost in tears. Yeah. William writes, Trump can swing influence and intimidate critics, but he has no idea how to win an actual argument. I agree with that. No, he only knows force. He only knows force. A friend of mine, I'm sure I've told this story. Jean Marie Laskus was doing I think, cover story for Life magazine many years ago on Fred. And she spent a lot of time with Fred, which is what she does when she's writing profiles. And she witnessed a number of things. But at the time, I think it was Wendy's. It was some fast food chain. I can't remember which one that had put out a television ad that had a Mr. Rogers-like character in it. And Fred saw it and was really angry. Can you imagine Fred really angry? Well, Gene watched as Fred called the CEO. And he never raised his voice. Gene sat in awe as he just said, hello, I'm Fred Rogers, and you have this ad, and here's what I do for a living, and it's very important for children to feel, certain that I am there for them and I'm not selling them anything. I'm not blah, blah. He did it all in this really quiet voice. And it took, I don't know. It was the same thing as with Senator Pastore. The CEO on the other end said, all right, it's done. We're over. You won't see that again. And you stop and think of how much money would have gone into creating a specific marketing campaign. And the CEO dumped the whole thing after Fred quietly, unthreateningly, there wasn't a threat to be heard. That is strength. Russ writes, a couple of years ago you had Liz Berlin and Fat Man D on your show. Yes, I did. And I was impressed with them. I was at a conference this past week and they were performing with their organization, We Rock. I was able to meet them after and I let them know I saw them on your show. Thank you for sharing these two wonderful people and hopefully you could have them on again. Well, I've had Fat Man D's been on the show a number of times. Liz, I think that was a first for me. Yeah, those are two wonderful, talented, and busy women, true activists, in fact. Oh my God, Milton, you found that Mr. Rogers commercial? Wow. It is Wendy's, huh? I don't recall ever seeing it. Well, thank you for that. Um, Guys, I am not necessarily a hockey fan. It's just not a game I, grew up with. Although there were, I mean, in Green Bay, there were hockey teams. But it's just not something that I knew. And then I just have trouble. I have tried. It's too fast, and the thing is too small. I every once in a while I get pulled in, like when the Penguins are really hot. So obviously I haven't been pulled in recently, and but you have to be totally out of it not to have heard about the Stanley Cup final this year, which of course the Penguins got nowhere near. And I didn't care or anything. And now, just in case you don't know, tonight on television, I'm going to be watching a hockey game. And I don't know anything about any of the players. This is game 7. Winner takes the cup. What makes this so mind-blowing is that, first of all, one of the teams is Florida. How does Florida get a hockey team? It just seems Florida and ice don't go together, but they do. And now they're, they've never had a Stanley Cup. That'd be the Florida Panthers. And then north of the border, where hockey is, you're born into hockey in Canada, the Edmonton Oilers. Been a long time for them. And what happened was those guys from Florida won game 1, won game 2, won game 3. 4 takes it all. which is to say, Edmonton won 4, 5, and 6. And do you know that never happens, rarely happens. I mean, you look at the record books for the National Hockey League, Major League Baseball, National Football League, all of those 3 big majors, only one team has come back, NHL, NBA, or MLB, from a 3-0 deficit in a championship series. Only one, and that was 82 years ago. So if Edmonton pulls off this win tonight, it'll be one for the ages. And fittingly, 82 years ago, the only other team that came back from a 3-0 deficit was a Canadian team, the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, again, I don't know nothing about the teams. I know next to nothing about the sport. But man, am I rooting for the Edmonton Oilers tonight. And they're playing on the enemy's ice. Not the enemy, their opponent's ice. That has to be a great game. Okay, that's it. That's it for me. Thank you so very much. Susan should be in here tomorrow, and we'll talk again, and I'll try to maybe lighten it up. What are the odds?
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.